thank you so much everyone for coming along. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are meeting on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people. We pay our respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all First Nations people present today. I'm Chris Button, editor of GadgetGuy and freelance games journo of many years now. For those who were in attendance for the previous panel looking at the best of South Australian games, I think it's incredibly apt that we're the follow-up act, so to speak, that we've taken a look at the rich history of South Australian games, and now we get to have a very exciting look at the present and the future of South Australian games with a panel of very talented developers that I'm very excited to speak with today. So this is going to be a very open and very casual sort of format, having a chat with each of the developers about how they got their start in game development, what they may have done previously, what they're working on, and some of the unique experiences of creating games in South Australia. So I'll go down the line. Jono Korvach is someone who this is a classic Adelaide story. We worked together 10 years ago on the crew of the SA Sports Show on Channel 44 some moons ago. Jono, tell us what you're working on, and yeah, it's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, so I'm Jono. Never met this guy before in my life. And so I've started a little solo studio, Toasterface Games. I'm not sure if you saw any bikes out in the main room there, but that's my project, is Pedal Rebel VR. I'm trying to incentivize fitness a little bit in VR and using an exercise bike as a tool to create this crazy simulation feeling. And it's going pretty well so far.
Wonderful. Chantal Ryan. Chantal, what are you currently working on?
I am working on the psychological horror RPG streamer simulation game, Dark Web Streamer.
Excellent. David Kazi, for those who are in the previous panel, would know formerly the technical director of Team Cherry, so worked on Hollow Knight, which I think needs very little introduction, but has now started a new venture. David, please tell us what you're doing at the moment.
Yeah, so I founded a new studio called Ember a couple of years ago. We are in the midst of doing our first game, 2D action adventure platformer. If anyone's a fan of Hollow Knight, more to come. We are looking to mix a little bit of new elements that we want to try. Number one is the cinematic platformer experience. We want to bring a bit more of that in there. And we can't wait to show everyone what we've been working on.
Wonderful. And Lauren Nicholls, you may have seen Lauren out on the show floor showcasing Sacred Acorn, one of the games that Lauren's worked on. Tell us a bit about Sacred Acorn and what else you're working on and have worked on as well.
So I'm the artist for the Sacred Acorn. So I do the art, the animation and the UI and everything visual really. And it released July last year, and we're still working on updates and patches for it ever since. I help with a couple of other indie projects around, including Rocks Odyssey by Sunshine Festival Studios. And yeah, just bits and bobs here and there.
Excellent. And rounding out our talented cast of developers, Arthur Chee. Arthur, there's a bit of pirate action happening on the show floor at the moment. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. Yeah, so pretty much just a team of 4 at the moment, just working on a pirate-themed roguelite. So we kind of describe it as a rough pitch, as like Adventure Time meets Hades is our initial floor pitch, essentially. I think that kind of covers the idea. So it's aiming for like a goofy, playful story with a bit of action combat.
Wonderful. And one of the really fascinating things about this group of people is that there's such a diverse background in terms of what led each of these people into game development. Jono, I'll start with you. Very interesting to be making a game not only using VR or mixed reality technology, but also on exercise bikes, so you're combining different technologies together. What led you to pursue game development and also such a unique mix of technologies and genres?
How long have you got?
Roughly 40 minutes.
Oh, okay, all right, it's cool. No, so I've got a background in media, as we've alluded to already. But yeah, when I was studying at uni, game design, getting into the games industry felt much like a pipe dream, and we're talking like 2010. There was a lot of big companies that all got shut down and things like that. So because I was always going to go into a creative field, I thought, well, you know, maybe I'll do one for work and I'll keep one for me. So I've always been a big gamer. My claim to fame is that my parents used to call in sick for each other for work so they could finish the original Zelda on NES. So been a lifelong gamer, always loved video games. I used to make some in high school and things like that, but I've been doing media as a career. And then as a video editor, things like that, I'm at my desk all the time. And I was like, I need a way to get up and move. VR came along and just absolutely captured me. Room scale VR, being able to move my body around, being able to experience these worlds from my perspective in there. I'm like, this is incredible. But so many people don't have enough space to get that full experience. So I tried to compress VR into a small space, and it just happened upon, well, we could use an exercise bike as locomotion. And yeah, the rest is history.
Excellent. And Chantal, I know you've come from an academic background as well, and working on this fantastic sort of hybrid mashup with Dark Web Streamer. What led you in towards game development after, I suppose, your career in academia?
I did not attempt to become a game developer. I kind of fell sideways into it and never figured out how to climb my way out. But yeah, I think I actually started Dark Web Streamer in my final year of my degrees in anthropology and English. And I too was kind of looking for any kind of outlet to like escape all the other things I was having to do. And as a lifelong gamer, I'm sure there's a bit of a trend among us there. Yeah, I just had an idea for a video game, kind of just like download into my brain. I saw what it looked like, how it should play, what it was going to be called. And I kind of messaged my friend and I was like, I just had the best idea ever for a video game. And he was like, let's do it. And I was like, but neither of us know how to make a game. And he said, I'm sure we can figure it out. So 4 years later, have still been working on this game. And basically I funneled in all of my life's experiences up until that point. So my specialities in my degrees were, among other things, identity and personhood. So investigating what makes a person, how do we perceive each other, how do we begin to care about each other, how do we differentiate. So I thought these were really interesting questions. And when I went to make games, I was really interested in exploring, how does a player come to care about a fictional character in a game? And that kind of led me into these simulations, simulating people very deeply with things you could care about. I also brought my English background in. I'm a writer as well as a bit of a linguist nerd. So I created language systems that were essentially, new technology to power these fake people we were making. And I used to be a web designer I've had many lives. I could go on, but, I brought my web design background into it as well. And I was like, well, we're, simulating people and simulating language and simulating worlds. Let's simulate an entire infinitely generated internet. So we did that as well. And yeah, there's a reason it's been 4 years.
And David, I know you mentioned the previous panel as well that you've come from a background in IT. You've worked on a lot of things in your time. So how did game development come to be a career option for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting one that it was drawn from a passion of gaming like everyone else. So played lots of games as a kid, and it stems from a place of inspiration, you know, between games and film. And I'd always loved to have been a film director or something to that effect, but that dream kind of faded away when it was like there's no real easy way to get into that. So IT was a natural place to fall into. And my background's in computer science, so ended up working for a telco and playing games in my spare time. And then around the advent of Unity, started really just playing around and poking with these systems for fun at home. And then that just became a commercial thing. So there was a point where I thought, I've got everything I need, you know, in the kit bag. I can just build a game that I want to build. And the right opportunity came up, and had all these little demos. And I thought, let's get on with the big thing. Same as Chantal was saying. I thought we can do a full scale game. It's been kickstarted. Everyone wants it. We'll figure the rest out along the way. How hard can it be?
Fool.
Fool's errand.
Oh, goodness. And Lauren, I know your specialty is in art and animation, and you've worked on animation projects as well as game development. So can you tell us a little bit about your career path as well, sort of merging those two, I suppose, passions or skills of animation and game development together?
Mm-hmm. So I started out in studying a degree in design and illustration, and I essentially realised relatively early on that it was quite hard to find work in that particular field. And then so I had been doing animation as a hobby for some time, and then I started to take it a bit more seriously as a potential career path. And I got some work with Monkey Stack, who's in this building, in fact. I worked on YOLO, the TV show, YOLO Silver Destiny, I think it's called. And yeah, so that was good. But again, in South Australia in particular, animation projects, large animation projects are a bit few and far between. So I'd had an interest in games for a very long time, and I'd sort of been fiddling with them in my own time. And I eventually connected with Kieran, who's the director of A Few Acorns, and he said, "Do you want to draw some squirrels?" And I said, "Yes, please." And yeah, so that's pretty much how I got into it.
How could you turn that down? Those squirrels. You want to draw some squirrels?
I couldn't.
No one could turn
Squirrels are
that
great.
down.
And Arthur, I know you come from a background in broadcast, which I'm very curious. You know, how do you connect, you know, a broadcast background and pursuing game development from there? Can you tell us about how you bridge that?
Yeah, sure. So I used to live in Alice Springs, right? So pretty much about 10 years ago, before I came down here, I was an apprentice broadcast technician in Parger Television, which is pretty much like Channel 9. So I was a technician, essentially. So I worked on more like keeping the television station up on air and all the satellite stuff and, like all that side of stuff. So I did like even just the odd camera work for like daily news and pretty much general anything. So essentially, the problem with being a creative person is that you kind of need to do some creative stuff. So your depression hit, and then I'm like, I kind of need to just change it up. So having like duality of the creative side and technical side. I tend to fall more into like digital creative content. So essentially, I came down to study, and there wasn't anything about 10 years ago. And I ended up doing a TAFE course, and this came after that, where I am now. But essentially, my background's pretty mixed skill set, but it's pretty much anything that can get anything done, really.
Yeah, and now I'm going to reverse course and go back down the line the opposite way. So Arthur, another question for you now. I know you talk about that diverse skill set, which has certainly served you well, given that you've got some AAA game development experience with Sledgehammer and the Call of Duty series, and now working on your own indie game. Can you please explain, for those who may not be as familiar, the difference of working on a large-scale AAA project versus a small-scale indie project? What some of the differences and perhaps challenges there are?
Having income is nice. So I don't know, like even just like when I worked at Sledgehammer, like so I worked on Warzone 2 and the last campaign for the 2023 Call of Duty. Which one was it now? Modern Warfare 3. So it's just really nice people. Like the fact that you can spend every day with people that like making games. Like I worked with people who essentially worked on The Sims all the way through, and like like people that like because I was working there as an environment artist and did old proofs and stuff as well. So the person on my team, he worked on Horizon and stuff like that, and like just hearing their stories about the stuff that you enjoy playing anyway. It's just having the opportunity to work day to day on stuff that is fun, and having that the people part of it, I feel, is more important. Of course, there's always going to be corporate parts of AAA that are boring, but I feel like indie is the better spot for me in general. You can't, when you work for someone else, you can't just do all-nighters if you want to. Like there's limitations. Sure, you can do stuff still, but at the end of the day, like you're spending your life on someone else's IP, and you've got to have to make the choice of your own. There has to be a limit there of like how long do you want to work on other people's stuff. So while I like the experience, I would still recommend people to try it for an experience if they can get in that spot. Of course, the answer to how you get there is just networking. Everyone here is probably better at some certain things than me, and not at the same time. So it's just network is the answer, right? So try it out. If you like it, then do it. But just know that, I would say be an indie first if you can, because once you're AAA, say if you spent like 10 years doing one thing and then you went to your own company later on, you would be at so many like dead gaps in your skill set that you won't be able to like make your own company because you need generalist. So like you have to go one or the other if you go. You can make games as an indie while you work for someone else, but you can't really do it the other way as efficiently, I feel. But yeah, it is a nice experience, is what I'd say.
Yeah, for sure. And Lauren, I want to touch on the Sacred Acorn for a little bit, because as any game developer will attest to, shipping any game is a wonderful milestone and a wonderful achievement in and of itself. So I'd love to hear a bit about the story about how Sacred Acorn came to be from the start to funding and shipping last year. What can you share about that journey?
Yeah, sure. So the Sacred Acorn originally was Kieran's, our director's, brainchild. He originally made a game jam game. Can't remember the particular game jam, but it essentially involved, it was a multiplayer game involving two squirrels racing to get acorns, I believe. And this was before my time, but he apparently got a really good response from it and decided that he would expand it into the Sacred Acorn as it is today. I came on essentially when Kieran decided that his developer art no longer met the criteria. And so for a while there, I was just sort of just contributing casually part-time. And and then eventually we brought on as well Vivian, our marketing and writing expert, and our composer and other few people came on board. And eventually I think the thing that helped us actually bring the Sacred Acorn to completion was that we got funding from Screen Australia. So we put in a grant and we got the full production grant. And that essentially enabled me to come on to the team full time and just essentially create so many art assets that essentially enabled us to complete the game. And so of course the end of the production process was quite a hectic time. We had a lot of unexpected bugs. I believe that the day that we actually released, we discovered one where you could beat the game in about 2 minutes. But luckily that got patched out. But yeah, so there's lots of... It's really interesting looking back on it now, seeing the entire process, and it all seems kind of unlikely how it happened, but I guess you never know how things are going to turn out in the long run.
Yeah, of course, and congrats again on shipping the game, a wonderful achievement. David, when I was asked to chair this panel and I was told that you were going to be on this panel, I set myself a limit of asking one and only one Team Cherry / Hollow Knight related question, and it is not when is Silk Song coming. That's not the question. The question is, having worked as technical director on a game that has been so successful, so widely beloved, why did you decide to then start your own team, start your own studio? What inspired you to move on and pursue a different creative project?
That's a great question. There's actually a couple of things that went on there, because after we'd launched Hollow Knight, I sort of shortly afterwards had left and moved on to do some other work. It's not something that's actually published much, but the one of the reasons I'd left was during that process, it was a massive undertaking for us. We worked really hard on it. One of the things I'd learned, at the start I mentioned, we'll figure it out, we'll do it. There's a lot of that guesswork, but what I identified was there's gaps in my knowledge that I wanted to explore, particularly architecture in terms of like code architecture or game architecture. And I really wanted to get out there and get some experience first before I started on something else. So the two guys at Team Cherry were carrying on. They had huge support. They wanted to continue going on. And I thought, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to try and learn a bit more about this so-called architecture. So I got a great job with a company another Adelaide local company that does business management consulting. But one of their things they do is IT and business architecture. So that's 7 years ago now that I've been there. I'm still work with them from time to time. And that endeavour was amazing. So it's kind of, I've heard people talk about this before, and it was weird to be on the other side of it now. I committed 5 years of my life to go, can I learn this field a lot better, because I want to design games better, I want to do stuff. So there was a bit of that I could have done with a break as well. We all worked really hard on it. So that got me away from that. And then the bug never left me, pun intended, but the urge to want to keep going never left me. Games are just such a creative outlet, as you were saying. It's essential. And when you work in IT, the work can be very dry. And so I'm the type of person, my imagination is running off. It's in ADD land, and I'm doing my work, but over here some video games being built and all these other colourful things are happening. So once that builds up, an idea makes it onto paper, and then that becomes the next project. That's the thing I want to do. So at the time, I also had the pleasure of meeting my now business partner, Alan Evans, who helped co-found Ember League with me. He's also been like a mentor as well, learning a bit more about that business side of it, the networking side. He's got a compendious knowledge of games as well. So once that happened, we thought, we partnered together and thought, this is the game we want to build. We're going to get something really exciting. And so it's been 2 years, we're about 18 months, 2 years in. And we're just having a lot of fun with it. We're thinking, what can we do that's the next generation of what we see as this type of game? What kind of tech do we want to use? What kind of people do we want to work with? Actually, quickly, I'll touch on that too, because I noticed the common theme here is generalists. Nobody in the team for us. We've got 4 of us permanent and some contractors. No one has ever worked in games before. So don't think that there has to be some kind of invitation that says, congratulations, you're a game developer. I'd say to anybody wanting to do it, get out there and do it. Nothing's stopping you. The barrier to entry is really low, lower than it's ever been. It costs very little, and you can have so much fun with it. And then it's a huge audience. Whatever you make, someone will want to play it. So I encourage everyone, be a generalist, do as many different things as you can, and bring those skills together, because you never know. And actually, again, speaking of Alan, my business partner, huge broad range of skills, no background in gaming, serial entrepreneur, started 7 or 8 businesses, and none of them had anything in common. And he just says, no, we'll just figure it out. That's being in the deep end. So whatever works for you.
I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that, especially working with people who don't come from a traditional games development background. I know it was one of the things that was mentioned, I believe it was last year, Interstate Studio Folly with their game Gubbins, for those who have played the word-based mobile game. One of their big points of difference is that, other than, I think, one of their studio founders, no one else came from a game development background either. I think it was mainly animation, art, creative, but in a non-games context. So, David, I'd really love to hear what inspired you and what prompted you to seek out the people that you did for Ember League, and what you believe they bring to the table, that might offer different perspectives from someone whose sole background is game development.
Yeah, sure. Interestingly, we didn't set out to do it that way. It just kind of happened. But what we found was we like to hire people based on, we say culture, but it's more of that. For example, all the folks we hire, whether they're contractors or otherwise, they often come to me and they'll say more traditionally, as you do with a job, here's my portfolio, here's my resume, would you like to see it? And I've said now, no, just come have a coffee, we'll talk. Because I'd like to get to know you. I'd like to see how you think, how you approach problem solving, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to test you, just going to talk to you. And you see enough of their work anyway. I mean, if you're lucky to work with an illustrator, animator, they have amazing bodies of work anyway. Connor, who's on our team, who's our animator, hadn't worked in games before. She makes thumbnails for YouTubes for a living on the side, but does amazing animation. But as soon as I'd seen her work, it took a minute. Alan had showed me. He said, "I've got somebody I found," and Alan, I believe, found her through there was a creatives convention, but it was online. It was it was really interesting. This was during sort of the last vestiges of COVID. And I saw Connor's work very quickly. Within a minute, I said, I can see the problem solving in the work there. The rest is just a conversation. So, it's more about how you think, how you approach it. Are you going to want to try new things? So again, generalist. So whatever skills, in the case of Connor, she had picked up. We use Spine for our game. I'd never worked with it. We needed somebody who could do it. I went out looking on the market for people who are Spine animators. Weren't any. Not that I could work with. So she goes, I'll give it a go. Absolutely mastered it. 2 weeks later, we had all these amazing things coming out of it. So that's more valuable to me, is somebody who's willing to give it a go. I'll try it out. If the answer isn't, sorry, I didn't train for that. The answer is, I'll just give it a go. That's extremely valuable.
And Chantal, that sort of links into some of the discussion we were having earlier in terms of figuring some of the things, some of the finer details of game development on the go. But I'd love to speak a bit more about what you mentioned earlier in terms of a lot of the inspirations that have gone into Dark Web Streamer, like your lived experience, your studies as well. And for anyone who does follow Chantal on social media or has listened to some of the podcasts that Chantal has done before, you'll know that Chantal is a very, very deep thinker about video games, the world, society. I think it sort of has, probably anthropology. It checks out there. So I'd love to hear how have all of these sort of studies, sort of life experiences fed into this passion that you now have for Dark Web Streamer?
Good question. Complicated question. I do want to quickly nod back and say I was vehemently nodding along with David because I could not agree more. The attitude that you bring, but not just the attitude, but the freshness of perspective that you can bring to a game, I think is probably the most valuable trait you can have in game making. And this actually, it does connect to your question. I swear it's relevant. But, I often credit my very diverse background and kind of stable of skills and life interests with why anyone began to care about this crazy project I started working on with absolutely no experience, no audience. No one knew who the hell I was. And we managed to, build a tiny little game empire off in the corner, still building. But I think it is the freshness of the game that has kind of captured people's imaginations. And to me, what freshness is bringing perspectives that are both familiar but frequently unuttered to the experience that someone is having. So there is a quote So I'm doing the thing. I'm doing the nerd thing. I'm going to quote the Nobel Literature Laureate. And I fear I don't remember his name right now, so I just lost nerd cred. That's good. But he said when he's writing books, what he's really doing is saying to his reader, this is how the world feels for me. Does it also feel this way for you? And so when I'm making games, what I'm thinking about is giving an experience that is valuable to the people who are giving me the gift of their time or giving us the gift of their time. I want them to come away from playing that game with a shift in that person, whether that's coming away with a different understanding of themselves or, you know, a kind of a philosophical curiosity or question that they've never really thought to experience before. Whether, you know, one of our characters has asked them a question about their childhood that they never really thought to ask themselves and has prompted a self-reflection. There are so many things that games can give. They can be like a really good conversation with a friend. And like, you know, my game is horrific. It's a horror game. There are like worms under your skin. Like, this is not an educational game, but it is a game that does think about philosophy, which is, you know, has always been an interest of mine. It thinks about what it means to be a person, what it means to care about people, what it means to be a person on the internet, what it means to commodify the connections that we have with each other. So, you know, my game is called Dark Web Streamer. It explores streamer culture through a horror lens. So, yeah, all of these different life experiences I've had, whether that is being a web designer in the heyday of the old internet, where, you know, people were really innovating a new culture that had never existed before. I brought that experience of the world into that game to try to share a little bit of what it felt like to be part of that with our players. You know, I brought the things I learned in anthropology to my players. I've brought, you know, I have a background in machine learning, not the evil generative AI kind, the pre kind, but, you know, like things I learned about like techniques we can use that are, you know, smart about technology and allow people to have kind of like more intelligent, self-aware technology experiences. So all of these like different aspects of background that I have had, I have then funneled into this video game very intentionally with the really prime directive of sharing little bits of my personal experiences and my passions and my curiosities with the player.
And that's one of the great things about games as a medium of art is, you know, there are so many different experiences. You know, we have games that make you think, and in your case, Jono, games that make you move, games that make you exercise. Jono tricked me into doing extra exercise this morning with his game. You spoke earlier, Jono, about, you know, one of the reasons behind making the game that you have in terms of you identified, you know, a need to move more, a need to be more active. I'd like to talk a little bit more about the technology used in terms of using VR combined with traditional exercise equipment. You know, how did you decide upon doing that, or what have been the challenges of, you know, merging these technologies together in terms of, I suppose, gamifying exercise?
Sure. I'll continue this wavelength of like I don't know the quote either. I don't know who said it, but but you'll use everything. You'll end up using everything you know and every skill you have at some point. Right, and so it is that like I've I identify very clearly as well the same thing, where like we all have very varying skills, varying interests. Some may fade over time. Some may come back and go, oh, actually, I know all of this stuff and I'm going to put it into this current project or whatever. So I find that is one of the big things. And what's really funny is if you looked at my childhood hard drive on my computer, you would see a bit of stop animation, a little bit of audio editing, a little bit of pixel art, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, like all sorts of different things. I mean, I made like a stick figure sketch show in PowerPoint when I was a kid. No animation skills whatsoever, type thing. And then you look at my current hard drive and what does it have on it? It has all of these different things. So I feel like I've sort of gone on a side quest, learnt media, learnt film, learnt art, learnt story, learnt narrative, and then I've sort of come right back and I went, well, what can I take? What can I bring that I've learnt in my media career? What can I now bring to my love of games, and what can we do from there? And then just the technology. Like I've always been a bit of a tinkerer. I've always been playing around with things. I've always thought, oh, what if we put that with that? That might be interesting, right? And again, I'm going to bring up the NES. We had an NES in the household since before I was born. And do you remember the old dance mat games? We had one called Athletic World, Family Fun and Fitness it's called, which is funny because it's sort of what I'm doing now. But you have to run on the dance mat, but it's like you're doing hurdles, so you have to jump or you have to like duck down and these things. And it was always really, really fun. And then that went away for a while. I stopped playing it and I started playing more serious games. Then I got to a drinking age. Then the dance mat comes back out again because now it's really fun to torture your friends and turn the difficulty up and things like that. So I feel like there's all of these ebbs and flows throughout, and it's following your interest, having a passion, I think, is kind of the theme of the talk too, is about like, you know, it doesn't matter your background, doesn't matter your skills, but your passion is very important, because if you're passionate about something, you're going to pursue it, you're going to work it out. And that's sort of it. So I picked up Unity and went, I got to do something in this VR space. It's so fresh, it's so new, there's so much that hasn't been done. What can we do? I played everything and went, oh, what if we had this and this? Why is this not like that? And I played a few games and went, oh, it's not, I really like the direction, but it doesn't have this. And so I just sort of, mashed them all together. And like I said, I wanted to bring that experience that I was having to more people. And I thought if I made it possible in a smaller space, then more people would be able to have the experience that I was having, and went, let's go for it. Exercise ended up being that kind of trigger. And then I went, okay, well, if I am trying to say, well, there are ways to have fun doing fitness that aren't traditional sports, that aren't in that thing, because I didn't like traditional sports growing up. Yet I've worked in the sports industry for 10 years now, but I was never really into that. I felt like the social elements of sport can be very confronting, can be traumatic for some and things like that. So I didn't really stick with sport very much as a kid. And then I didn't really have an outlet for fitness and for exercise and for activity. But I've always loved games. Tried to build that back in, and then I tried to build the gameplay around how I wanted the player to feel, how I wanted them to play, and then gear it in a way that it's going to be fun, it's going to be engaging, and then it's going to enable them to take it upon themselves to keep playing and to create a healthy habit out of it. So yeah.
And based on the brief play session I had this morning, I reckon you've nailed the brief. It's a very cool experience. So if you haven't tried an exercise bike with VR before, I'd strongly encourage you to do so.
Please don't. I'm very tired.
As we draw this session to a close, Sage is about showcasing the great work of South Australian developers, artists, and everyone else as part of the community. So the one question I'd like to pose to each of the panellists to round us out is, why do you choose to make games in South Australia? Because, as we know, there's ever-changing, I suppose, circumstances or economic factors, lots of things that go into making games or where we choose to make games. So Arthur, I'll start with you. Why do you choose to make games and pursue game development in South Australia?
Oh, it's a big question. This is one of those things of like, could really do it anywhere, really. But it's like
Because I
very
live
like
here.
weird in a way because like you're making it in a room that's not really anywhere because a room can be anywhere. Well, just mostly just the people, really. Like, I mean, like I've always been tempted, even as a business owner, like I'd just close up shop and just go somewhere. Even like if I wasn't even working in games, like it's just tempting just to go somewhere else anyway. But to work in games here, I just, Adelaide's like that nice sweet spot where it's not too big, not too small, and you can pretty much get anywhere. And I think everyone like overhype the bigger cities and stuff like that. But I like Adelaide as like just a general vibe. I don't feel like I'm pressured to do anything. I just do stuff I want to, and life's pretty simple. And I think when I'm worried about making something, all I want to do is focus on what I'm trying to make. I don't need any other worries in the world. I just need to just focus on what I'm trying to do. And Adelaide's just enough of everything I kind of need to just be okay. I think that's it.
Yeah, wonderful. Lauren, what about yourself? Why do you choose to make games in South Australia?
Partly it's definitely to prove to the eastern states that the other states exist. And also, yeah. I mean, you go to PAX and there's all these made in Victoria signs. Anyway, but the other reason is just that I think that South Australia really punches above its weight in terms of games that it produces. I've noticed that it's overrepresented in certain grants and so on. So I think that we have a lot of really skilled people in this state, and so there's a lot of potential for games here.
Great. What about you, David?
Wholeheartedly agree. 10 years ago when I started doing games commercially, that was one of the things I'd seen is I was amazed at all the talent that's here. And a lot of it is still in the woodwork even now. It's great to see where things are now versus 10 years ago, but I love Adelaide. It's my home. I grew up here, and it's amazing to see what it can do, because growing up the sentiment was, well, little old Adelaide, what can we do here? But that is not true. We can aim for the stars as well, and the talent is here, and the people are here, and there's amazing people here. So I want to see more of that. I want to see more people get out there, make games, do stuff, and aim high. Don't just compete with the people around you. Aim for those things. Aim for the world. Aim for competing with the US, whatever that might be.
Aim for the top of the Steam wish list.
Aim for the top of the Steam wish list. I mean, I didn't believe it. I didn't think it was possible, and we saw it happen. And that warmed my heart to go, yes, you can do it. Nothing is going to stop you. You just want to get out there and do it yourself. That's all I think that it takes. So I want to keep making games here in Adelaide. I'd love to work with more people in Adelaide. We want to find more people, but it's not always there. 10 years ago, I keep throwing back to that, but somewhere in that last 10 years, those people were leaving. So I was seeing a lot of animators, a lot of riggers, a lot of 3D model builders move straight to the US, move to Canada, because that's where the opportunities are. So if we keep getting the support here, whether that's from the government or from other industry bodies, the people will stay and they'll work here, and the talent will stay here, and we definitely could be a hub for it in Australia. So I absolutely agree. We could punch above our weight. So let's all do that.
What about you, Chantal?
Yeah, I mean, my family is here. I have a whole life here. It is worth noting that other states have attempted to poach us away. I won't name names, but, I've had some juicy offers in terms of, if you move here, we'll get you a few $100,000 in funding. Actually, more than one. So, it has been a conscious decision to stay here. Like was said, you can make games from anywhere. My team is largely located in the US. So, we are able to do incredible things both with local talent, but also with stellar talent overseas, while getting to maintain the incredible quality of life that South Australia does provide us. It is, I really can't imagine raising a family anywhere else. David, you mentioned 10 years ago we were losing talented people left and right. I felt that, felt like every time I made a really good, really talented friend, they would move in like 12 months. I'm like, this person's incredible. We're going to do so many amazing things together. And then they'd move to the US or they'd move to Melbourne. And I was like, crap. But we are seeing more support and, a growth of industry. Here we are all helping support that industry, which is something I'm very proud of. And something I love helping support other people support. So, it is a very, I'm very grateful to have this place and this space for us.
And Jono, why do you choose to make games here in South Australia?
I don't like traffic. So we're saying lots of really nice things about South Australia. Don't tell anyone, please. Yes. As Arthur was saying before as well, like it's the people, it's the community. I mean, I grew up here as well, but also Adelaide is in that sweet spot where if you're doing something creative, if you're out there and you're putting yourself out there and you're meeting people, you will find your people, you'll find your crew, you'll find that. And there's so much crossover, and there's so many skills overlap and crossover and circle back and all this. And so you'll meet all these people. Like I'm running into you here from a completely different thing through a lot of the stuff. So Adelaide is this really really great place where the communities that are there, they're very tight knit, they're interconnected. If you're passionate about something and you're telling people about it, they might go, "Oh, I've got a friend, I've got this," or whatever. It's perfect for that, especially in business as well. You can always find someone that can help someone else and all of that. So that's a huge thing for us for sure. And like we've been saying, it's just we're developing so much. We're getting bigger and better. It's great. We are punching above our weight with the right size and traffic.
As good a reason as any. That brings this session to a close. So please, a very warm round of applause for all the developers here. And a very big thank you to everyone for attending. My one message to all of you is please go and buy an indie game. Support your local developers and have a lovely rest of Sage. Thank you once again.